Hello, Huntsville. I'm Cynthia Joyner with the Cynthia Joyner Real Estate Group, and I'm so excited to be kicking off season 2 with a look at the music scene here in Huntsville. Today I'll be joined by Huntsville music royalty, Mr. Microwave Dave, for a chat about a bar, a bomb, and a blues man.
I'm a crawling Tuesday.
Tell me, how did you get the name Microwave Dave?
It's a long story, Cynthia. How much time do we have? It's pretty long.
Let me look at my watch here. I'm going to give you an hour.
An hour, okay. No, I can edit it down. It actually came about in the 1980s, and I was a blues musician and a blues fan, but I wasn't playing blues in the area. There really wasn't much blues in the area at that time. And the only place you could hear traveling blues bands was at the Coffee Clutch Bar downtown. And they would bring in bands from Memphis and from Texas and from Chicago and all the really name quality bands. And I was going in there one night to hear a guy named Chicago Bob Nelson. Chicago Bob was coming, he's from Louisiana, and he lived in Atlanta, but he was Chicago Bob because Muddy Waters had named him Chicago Bob when they played together. And I was going to hear particularly a guitar player that played with him named Tinsley Ellis, who was in his band. And I was all excited about that, and I went in there, and when I got there, they said, well, Dave, you picked a bad night. Tinsley Ellis just went out on his own and left the band. And I thought, okay, well, he's got to have somebody good in there. So I went in, and in the process, I got introduced to Chicago Bob, and he said, you're a blues musician? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, you write songs? And I said, yes, sir. He said, you have any with you? And back in those days, you carried your songs on a cassette. You know, you would pass them out to people that you think might be able to use them. And I said, no, sir, I didn't bring any songs out. He said, well, I've just lost all the songs that I have. I'm in the middle of an album. They went off with my guitar player who just left on his own. And I've got to complete this album, and I've got to go back in the studio. Excuse me. And I'm just out. Do you have anything you think might be good for me? How about waiting until the last set, and I'll let you sit in, and you can sing a couple you think might be good for me. And so I agreed to that. And I waited till the last set, and they were doing good. They had a good band. And I got up there, I'm supposed to do 2 songs. And I started getting in good with the audience. I did about 5. And finally, Bob's like, gets the hook and gets me off of there. And he says, thanks a lot. That was Dave, I'm trying to remember my last name. He said, that was Dave the Microwave, y'all. Dave the Microwave, thanks a lot. So I didn't think much about that, and I went home that night and left my jacket in the place, and I came back to get the jacket. And the next day there was a very intoxicated man, about the age I am now, sitting at the end of the bar right by the stage. And he was in the same clothes and the same condition he had been in the night before. Looked like he'd just stayed. And when I came walking in, he said, Microwave Dave. And I went, Microwave Dave. So it was a blues guy started it, and an intoxicated local man finished it. So.
Bright lights, big city, where my two my babies in. Bright lights, the big city.
After I started getting out and hearing the local musicians, I realized that the bar is pretty high here. We have a lot of talent here, and I could see it all over the place. Everywhere I looked, I ran into musicians who were really good. The ones working in the night spots, the ones in the churches, the ones that were in the school teaching, the kids that were coming out of the school, they all were like better than what I was seeing in other places I lived. And I lived in a lot of big cities, so I was very impressed with that. The other thing I liked was that the musicians all seemed to support each other. And I'd be out seeing a band somewhere, and we talked to them on the break and tell them how good I was. I said, well, you've seen us, now be sure you go over here and see these guys. Don't go anywhere without going to see these guys. And they would send you, and that band would go say, great, we're glad you came in, be sure you go see these guys. So they're all sending you to see each other. And that's not always the case in music or any art form, really. People can be really territorial about their work, but it was not that way. That was one of the first things that attracted me to the area, I think. I started high school in Houston. I was in Houston, and I had started playing music in the school bands. Then my family moved to Atlanta, and that was the end of all that. It all ended just like that. So I had to kind of go back to scratch, and I had a motorcycle. I was delivering the newspapers on, no motorcycle. So I went back to walking to school and just kind of, like, my whole life was grounded kind of, and I started over. Yeah, that was it. But it turned out good. I started playing music in popular music bands in Atlanta, playing rhythm and blues primarily. And then we did a Beatle act in 1964 that got booked several different times. Wound up playing with the Atlanta Pops Orchestra that summer because Beatles were hugely popular at that time. So that was really how that developed all the way through high school.
Tell me a little bit about your band and the members of your band.
The Nukes,
Yes.
well, the Nukes are on hiatus right now. So it's we had a band that operated about 34 years. We started in 1989, and Rick Godfrey, who's a native Huntsvillian, born and raised here, raised up on Montesano actually. And I was working for him when we started the band, and he was a self-taught guitar player. And I couldn't find a bass player that would play blues. At that point in the 80s, most of the bass players were really funky, and they were really good at that funk style of bass playing. It was very difficult to do, but I needed somebody who could play down the blues groove and just hold it down there to do that kind of music. And so if that's for me, I'm not here, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. So I Rick talked to me and said, "Can you show me how to play the bass?" And said, "If it doesn't work, don't worry about it." So we started playing blues songs on our lunch break. I was working for him, and it just worked out. And then we wound up at WLRH public radio station was having a fundraiser coming up, and I went down and volunteered to be a phone volunteer down there. They had the only blues show on radio at that point in the Huntsville area. And I went to be a volunteer on the phone, and they asked me to get on the air. I was sitting around, the phones were ringing, so I was sitting around playing a harmonica with all the people on the phone banks and just messing around. You got to send us some money. You got to send it right now. Just carrying on. And they said, "We're going to put you on the air doing that." So they put me on the air, and phones rang. And so people called in and made a couple of donations and stuff. So they said, "You got a band, right?" I said, yeah, sure. And I did. We were just practicing at that point. So we started out with that, and then we met Mike Alexander, who had just moved here from Chicago. He knew how to play the blues on the drums. And we put him in the band, and that was the beginning of it. And we got really lucky. In 1989, Stevie Ray Vaughan in particular was driving interest among the white audience for the blues. The black audience always had the interest for it. The white audience was getting it. So we hit it at the right time, and we were here in Huntsville playing it when everybody wanted to hear that kind of music, and we were playing Stevie Ray Vaughan songs. And so we wound up just packed out our first summer. Every night the place was just full. So that was really how it all began.
And how many years have you been performing?
We're not now, but we went 34 years before it kind of came to an end. Right as the pandemic kind of put a stop to it right then. We've had several things that, besides the pandemic, that happened to it that got us. We didn't ever break the band up, but our bass player's more or less retired out of it, and our drummer's out playing with a name act out on the road. He's playing with Jason D. Williams on the road. So I'm just pretty much playing solo in the area now. I have a couple other guys I'm playing. We call the Blue Band, not the Blues Band, but the Blue Band. Daryl Tibbs, who's from here in the area, raised here in the area, and then Clay Swafford, piano player, who's from down in Oakman, but lives in Huntsville now. When I was at WLRH during the fundraiser, when I was doing the little harmonica business and all that, they put me on the air. And after that was over, I think it was a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from Wayne Blackwell, who was the program director, said, "How would you like to do a local hour of blues? Just play your blues records on the air." And I said, "Well, my records are in pretty rough shape, but I'd be glad to play them on the air and talk about them." And he said, "Well, that's what we'd like to have, a local blues show." So that was October. I started October of 1989, and I started that. And you can tell my diction is not good now. I speak too quickly, and I get too enthusiastic about what I'm talking about. I never learned to be an announcer like I should have been. I came straight in, and they just let me go with it. I had phone calls. I was live on the air. And I get phone calls and they, "Can you slow down? We can't understand a thing you're saying." And so I try to calm myself down, but I'd be excited about the records I was playing. And that was the the beginning of it. That, and then it was 2 years later when Dr. Hayward Handy at Alabama A&M, through a great deal of difficulty on his part, got not only an FM broadcast license for another public radio station, but he got another full 100,000 watt FM broadcasting license. So we had two 100,000 watt FM stations in the same town. And a lot of bigger cities than us have one, and they're like 20,000 watts. They don't carry all that far. And here we are, we have two. And so Ellen Lewis was working at WLRH at the time, and she was going over there to become the program director. And at one point, I just said to her, "Who's going to do the blues for you?" And she said, "Well, we haven't really set it up. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll come over and do an hour." And so I said, well, she called me back and said, "Can you do 2 hours on a weeknight?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." So that started in, I think, 91 or 92. I'm not sure the exact year, but that was something I got on. I have never expected, as important as radio was to me, I never expected to be on the radio doing any of this stuff.
Tell me a little bit about Microwave Day.
Yeah, one of the major surprises of my life. Yeah, it was a dear friend of mine who I met when I first came through here, playing here in the 70s, Allison Lewis, who's still here, came up with the idea for this at one point. And I think the idea was just to have a one-day concert, because I've always gone and played all the benefits and things that I can. I just believe in that. It's if you can go help a cause or help a person that's struggling or whatever, it's, why shouldn't you apply your music to this? And I've always enjoyed that aspect of it. So I've always done that. She said, "Well, we ought to do a concert for you because you're always doing that." I said, "Well, I'm doing fine. I'm not struggling with anything." She said, "Well, we ought to just do it just to do it." So she started it. And then it got out of hand. A bunch of other people got involved, and it got just more and more people having a big concert. And they started asking me, "Well, who would you want to play at this if we had a concert?" And I said, "Well, just these local musicians. Let's make it a local musicians festival if we can do that." And then someone got Mayor Tommy Battle involved, and he's the one that proclaimed it officially Microwave Dave Day, and that made it, an official event at that point.
Now, therefore, I, Tommy Battle, Mayor of the City of Huntsville, do hereby proclaim June 28th, 2015, to be Microwave Dave Day. And that's on June 28th. Dave, most of the time when people get these, they get them about 7 o'clock at night, and it's their day, and they only have about 5 hours left. You will get to participate all day in your day.
Thank you.
I'll say thank you for lots and lots of years. It doesn't mean that you have to quit now, but I want to say thank you for lots and lots of years of giving back to this community and all that you've done for us. You've made us a better community for it.
The events themselves are just amazing. The people show up, and maybe it's just because it's got my name on it, but all the people I see are always in a great mood. It's a happy event for people. And I get to see a lot of musicians that I really love around here, and they're up playing sometimes with their own groups. Sometimes they're being mixed together in jams and things like that, and that for me is really special. But I really wish everybody could have a day with their name on it and be treated like that. It was it swells your head up a bit, but it also swells up your heart.
Which musician would you compare your sound to?
All I can think of is all the ones that we fail to sound like, especially working your way up. You try to reach the goals of sounding like the people you respect, or the people you admire, and the people that inspire you. You try to sound like them. And I have never, ever reached that with anybody that I've looked up to, starting with Les Paul way back to all the way up to all the blues guys and all the rhythm blues guys. James Brown, I saw him a bunch of times. And just amazing showmanship, and the best band I ever saw up until that time. And could not do what he did. There was no way to do what he did, and that level of intensity he put forward. So, for me, it's an endless search to try to do that. But on the other hand, you have to be what you are. You can't really try to be an assimilation of somebody else. You have to be what you are, and so sooner or later you learn to live with that. And if it makes people happy, you're doing your job right. Those times when I first heard Little Richard, the first thing I noticed was the voice. The sound of the voice had all that texture in it, and extreme high energy, and he sounded so earnest and yet it sounded like he was having such a great time. He was earnest, but he wasn't miserable being earnest. He was having a great time being earnest. And I wasn't used to that at all. I was used to a bit more just kind of level emotions. You know, I'm happy and I'm good. It's a happy song, you know, kind of the hit parade kind of stuff. Little Richard was, no. We're having a good time. We're all going to have a good time. And all those songs he did, I mean, Tutti Frutti was he was singing the drum like a wop bop a loo bop a lop bop bop. He was singing that. The other things he had too, Good Golly, Miss Molly, all these things. There was almost no way to sit still. So I think he, as a voice, had an effect, and he, as a songwriter, had an effect. But his personality was just flamboyant. It was just hard to not be happy when you saw what he was doing. So then you come up, there have been so many people that I love around here now, but I think I have been, as far as a group of people that have moved me more than anyone else here, would be the Aeolians at Oakwood, the times that I've heard, or I've had a chance to actually perform with them a couple of times. And every time I've heard the Aeolians, I've just been blown away by how good they are, how much they not only live the music, they live their message. They're not adding message to it. They're not staying on message. They're in it. And I've been with them in very informal circumstances, like where we walked a labyrinth together during an event celebrating first responders a couple of times. And those kids were out there wearing their regular clothes, walking this labyrinth, singing the songs. And it was an unrehearsed program. They knew the stuff, but it wasn't like a rehearsed concert. And those kids up singing, and tears are dropping. And they're all just completely in it. And the music was so moving, and the arrangements were so good. It was just such appealing music. And so I think that's probably my favorite group out of the area, out of everywhere been. And another one that's kind of different that I watched grow up from being a young person in town, and she grew up into being a full-fledged opera singer. I used to see her in church when she was about 15 or 16, and her voice kept getting bigger and kept getting bigger and kept getting bigger and kept getting bigger. And she finally got to where she could just about drown out the entire church choir all by herself. And I kept thinking, excuse me, I don't know anything about opera, but this has got to be an awfully good voice. And she finally came out from here, from private lessons here, and went to Juilliard on the Beverly Sills Scholarship. She won the Beverly Sills Scholarship, which is very big in opera. And seeing her grow into that, I'm sitting here blank out on her name, and that was really stupid, but she and some other people started the Twickenham Fest, which is a classical music festival that we had here, bringing in world-class talent to play for everybody for free. She put them on, and people all around could come for free.
And I keep on growing bigger, the grass is really high. Keep on growing bigger till the day.
I've never been able to come up short for good music in this town. And the concert thing that they put on, the Monday night concerts in the park have been really good. Panoply used to be really great for bringing in local music primarily. And then they got later on, they started trying to book out of town talent. And they began to be a ticketed event at that point. It kind of changed the people who could afford to go see it. But it was still a lot of great performances by local artists at Panoply was over there good. And then Big Spring Jam raised the ante for everybody by having national acts. The Allman Brothers Band came in to play that. Just all kinds of major stars came in. We've never been short on good music here. And people that are willing to support it. That's the other thing. The audience here in town is really strong. And I watched the audience age. I mean, I'm 77 now, so when I got here, I was in my 40s, I guess. And I watched people come up, 20 years younger than me, come up and graduate and become the guys who are doing most of the business and doing most of the playing. And then their children have come up, and I watched it repeat. And a lot of them will find somewhere else to go, and they'll move to a big media center or a big music center. But a lot of them stay here and keep adding to what happens here. There's something about living here, I think, that holds people in the place.
Like and subscribe to Hello Huntsville today on all your favorite podcast platforms. Sponsored by the Cynthia Joyner Real Estate Group, Jeff the Mortgage Guy, and Tony with T-Mail in the Morning Show.